Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Courtside with Beilinson Tennis, part of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. We have with us today former top 35 WTA Tour professional CiCi Bellis. CiCi recently announced her retirement from pro tennis this past January. She's currently leading a path outside of the tennis industry. She's had a very interesting journey. Both Steve and I are looking forward to chatting with her. So without further ado, please welcome to the pod, CiCi Bellis. CiCi, thank you for spending time with Steve and I today.
Of course. Thank you guys for having me. Excited to be here.
So, I mean, there was some recent news. Obviously, you retired in January, but the other big news, and it's congratulations from both of us, recent engagement to Sam Riffice, the 2021 NCAA champion with the Florida Gators. The Gators are rolling. Ben Shelton just with the 2022 NCAA champion. Engagement going okay? Wedding plans going okay?
Yeah, everything's great. Thank you. Yeah, we're both so excited, and we actually just kind of started planning, and we're thinking early next year.
Awesome. Now, again, very important question, probably one of the most important questions we can ask you. And I don't think Sam is next to you, so he can't defend himself with this. Healthy CiCi Bellis versus Sam Riffice, baseline game to 7. Who's winning it?
I mean, my goodness, he's so good. It'd be tough to really compete. If I have my day, I might be able to sneak one in. But yeah, I'd have to be playing pretty well.
All right. Well, we'll take that answer. You obviously have a very interesting journey. We have a lot to unpack, so many great experiences. If you don't mind, if we can start at the beginning, you were born in San Francisco, right?
Sure was, yeah.
And I guess, how did you get started in the sport, and when did maybe there was like a first moment, an aha moment, be like, okay, one, I love this sport, and two, I'm pretty good at this thing?
Yeah, I mean, when I was younger, I played pretty much every sport. I think I counted like 8 to 10 sports at one point when I was really little, and then kind of narrowed it down to soccer and tennis as I got older. And just kind of chose tennis when I was around 12, 13, as I started playing more national tournaments. And I just really liked the individual aspect of it. I love soccer too, but ended up going with tennis.
You mentioned some national tournaments, and anyone who does research on your junior career, it was an amazing junior career. You won 5 national junior singles championships, was ranked number 1 in the girls 18s in 2014. So what, were you 15 at that time?
I was, yeah, 15.
I remember Capriati won it at 13, I think. He was going through it. I mean, amazing. 15 years old. You, by winning the hard courts that year, you earned a wild card into the Open. I know Steve remembers this. I'm sure Steve was at the match, maybe, or at least on the grounds. You got into the Open and beat 12 seed Dominika Sibylkova, who was also very good. She was a runner-up the Australian Open earlier that year. If you can kind of share your experiences about that, whether you were overwhelmed with the occasion or, nothing really expected from me. I'm playing the 12th seed Australian Open finalist, can just kind of swing free and play free.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. A lot of players have different mindsets. I was never one that was like, oh, I'm just going to go out and swing for the fences here. I always kind of put a certain amount of pressure on myself to play well and, eventually to do well. So, yeah, I mean, it was obviously an incredible start to my career. I felt super kind of overwhelmed afterwards with how much kind of media and everything was involved, just because I hadn't had that before. But overall, a really cool experience.
I mean, Steve, you remember that match, Steve, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you remember the feeling? I remember you caused an enormous amount of excitement. The word was spreading about you, and there you were with that big win and winning a round. And do you remember the sense of excitement you felt at knowing the public was becoming aware of you and that you were making such an impact at the at our Grand Slam championship in the United States?
Yeah, I mean, couldn't have happened at a better tournament, I think. Definitely got lucky with the tournament. Still probably my favorite tournament that I played, just having it, in our home country and being such a big tournament. But yeah, it just was super exciting for me, and definitely not expected at that point, and just coming off kind of a junior career. So it was super a great memory, super fun.
Incredible at that young age. And then again, 2 years later, you were back at the US Open. You beat Angelique Kerber. I guess kind of compare the two mind frames going in, whereas the first time just won the hard courts, got the wild card in. Who knows how it's going to happen, versus now, a couple of years later, You've had success at the US Open. What was that like this go around?
When I played Kerber,
Yeah.
well, she was, oh my gosh, she won the tournament that year. It was just insane playing her at such a high level. And, going into the match, I'd played 5 matches. I'd come through quali. So I was, definitely feeling it body wise. I was a little tired at that point, but it was such a cool experience. First time playing on Arthur Ashe. And that was definitely overwhelming too, for sure. But gosh, she was such an incredible player at that point. I think a lot of people ask me, who is the best player I ever played? I think I would say when I played Kerber that year at the US Open, I think she was the best player I've ever played.
Were you, I guess maybe more overwhelmed in the moment that you knew how big this event was and you knew everything about the US Open at the time because you had experienced it a couple of years earlier where you really didn't know how big it was going to be, especially after you won that match against Sibylkova. Did that maybe make you play a little bit more tighter just because you knew more about everything about the tournament?
I don't know if it was tighter. I think, going into the tournament when I was 15, I knew how big it was just from watching it, a bunch of years when I was younger. So I don't necessarily think that played, kind of any role, but yeah, it was crazy playing on Ashe the first time. I think that was an overwhelming experience being in front of that many people and on such a huge court for sure.
Amazing. Amazing. We talked about Sam at the beginning, Sam and Ben, both at the University of Florida, with winning Nats in 2014 at just 15 years old. Was college something that maybe originally was on your mind? And then you're like, okay, I'm having pretty good success here. You then go to the Open, you beat the 12 seed. Was it pretty easy for you to say, let's skip it now, we can go back, which by the way, you did, you got your degree. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Or was it more complicated? I mean, was that a serious decision that you had with your parents, even with all the success you had in your junior career?
Yeah, that was a serious decision. I'd, grown up near Stanford, and that's where I wanted to go. I ended up committing to play there. And then I had a really good summer and made it to the 3rd round that year and ended up losing to Kerber at the US Open and decided that I'd be able to go back if I wanted to at some point. So yeah, it was definitely one of the tougher decisions of my career, and I stand by it. Even though I got hurt and had to stop, I think I had incredible experiences that led me to the point where I'm at now. So yeah, it was a tough decision, but not something I regret.
Did you feel a little cheated by the injuries? Because you think of so many of the players have these short-term shoulder, arm, wrist injuries, knees, and then they're back in a couple of months, and then maybe they go 3 more years and they have another injury. But yours, in the end, it really set you back. Did how much remorse do you have about the fact that your body let you down in a way and didn't allow you to have a longer career?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be easy for me to sit here and say, oh, shoot, I wish my career was 15 years longer and I was still playing, but I'm super happy now. And, I think where I am now has opened my eyes to a whole different world. And I still have, my foot kind of inside the tennis door, working with Tennis Channel a bit and things like that, kind of on the other side of the not playing, obviously, but on the other side of things. And, I'm super happy. It'd be easy for me to sit here and say, yeah, it sucked, whatever, and be upset about it. But I'm super happy. I'm super happy with my life. And, obviously it wasn't anything that I did. It was a genetic reason that ended up, causing all the injuries. So it was really nothing I could do anyway. So, yeah.
Was when you came back in 2020, you beat Karolina Muchova 2nd round of the Australian Open. Was that a point where you were actually pain-free, or you were never really pain-free? It was more just managing the pain and just kind of, let's kind of get through the day.
Exactly. Yeah. Super, super tough because it was so exciting to be back and there, but I knew I was still in pain. And I remember playing a doubles match that year. I think it was at like 7 or 8 p.m. It was starting to get cold and my elbow just started to kill me again. And it was a tough situation, but yeah, it was more just getting through it. I knew that there was still underlying issues for sure.
I want to go back, if you don't mind, something you said, it was interesting. When you talked about the college decision, you talked about that after 2016 when you played Kerber in the Open, right? So when you won Nats at the age of 15, you had not made, you were still saying, you know what? I know I won a round at the US Open, whatever, beat the 12 seed, but college was still at the forefront. You had not made your
For sure.
decision to skip it at that point.
No, I didn't decide until the US Open 2 years later when I got to the third round. At that point, I felt like I had made some more inroads, and I made it to top 100 at that point. That was a big goal of mine. I didn't want to turn pro until I was top 100 in the world, and I could really, have a decent career in tennis. So yeah, it was more, it was later on, and it definitely is still a huge, it was the path I was going to take at that point.
Well, you got your degree. I'm seeing that, 3.96 GPA. So Steve, not too shabby on the academic front from her. Wherever life takes you, and I think Steve and I were both interested in this, and you kind of mentioned it. We hope you stay in some way, shape, or form in the sport of tennis. I mean, you have so much to give. You have so many great experiences. Do you see yourself staying within the sport for hopefully
Definitely
a long time?
Yeah, I think so. In April, I started working with Tennis Channel on the broadcasting side. I've been loving it. And I definitely plan to continue doing that. Hopefully, working for other companies as well. And I really enjoy being in the game still.
Before I want to end asking you if you have any advice to, juniors or even young pros on tour, I want to ask Steve, Steve, you saw a lot of CiCi playing, and just before we let her go and I wrap up, is there any, one or two things you want to pick her brain about before she has to go?
No, I just wonder how when you made this transfer to the commentary boxes, as you've said, there are a lot of players in that position that almost still want to be out there. But it sounds like in your case, you really enjoy the other role, and that you can do it without thinking of yourself being in the shoes of one of those players and regretting that, as opposed to enjoying what you're seeing and using your experience as a player to inform the viewers. How do you feel about it from that standpoint?
Yeah, for sure. No, that's a great point. I think I agree. It is tough for some players to separate the two, but it's been super easy for me. I don't, really have a choice. I couldn't play if I wanted to. So I really enjoy doing it and looking at it from the lens that you said, for sure.
Do you look at the game in a different angle now? Do you see the game differently from up in the booth versus you being on the court?
Totally different. Yeah, it's so interesting. I think being in a match and figuring out patterns and stats and everything and how I want to play is, I don't know, it's just a different perspective. It's a much wider and broader perspective. And I think I can add a lot more to different strategy conversations now from, having a player perspective and then also a viewer perspective. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Have you been able to coach if you want to? And I know maybe hitting may be somewhat limited, but would that be something that would interest you? I know you're busy doing some other things right now, but on the side, or who knows what the future may bring with that?
Yeah, so I have done a little bit just here in Orlando, just with the USTA, but I can actually still hit and train if I wanted to. I just can't serve competitively. So that's the thing that's holding me back. But yeah, I go out and hit all the time for fun. And I love giving insight where I can.
Awesome. Before we let you go, that we'll give you the form on this. You got some young, real good aspiring juniors, or maybe some young professionals. Anything you may want to share, anything good that you went through or wish you had known when you were going through it, that you may want to give some advice before we leave?
No, that's a great question. I think a few things. Obviously, enjoy every minute. I did, and it's such an incredible sport. Being able to do it professionally or even high level as a junior is an incredible opportunity. And I think really planning your schedule smart is a huge part of not getting hurt. And obviously, not in my case, but from a lot of players that I know, planning it correctly and how you think is the best way you're going to be able to perform is super important.
Steve and I have talked about this, and maybe you can speak to this a little bit. Everybody is so outcome based, not just in the tennis world, in any industry you're in. How did you do, or how did the coaches work with you on saying, hey, let's just focus on the process. Let's get better every single day. Let's, work on your strengths, get your weaknesses a little bit better. Let's not spend all the time on weaknesses, but really keep getting 1% better every day. Focus on the process, and then the outcome just becomes a result of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely tougher for younger players to see since they're earlier on in their career. But as you get older, you definitely have that mindset more often, I think. And I was always a player that loved to take training blocks and work on things in between tournaments in the season. So I was a huge proponent of that.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we know you're busy. We appreciate your time, and best of luck going forward. Whatever it is you do, you're going to kill it. You're going to crush it.
Thank you.
But I know Steve and I both hope that, and you kind of said that you would stay in tennis in some way, shape, or form, because you got a ton to give out there to the world, CiCi. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Really appreciate it.